Hello, Bobby Torres of Frightbox recording here with my top 3 tips for compressing vocals for a nice consistent vocal sound that doesn't sound overly compressed or squashed. In other words, a professional sounding vocal sound. So just recently I had a subscriber ask about compressors and how many compressors you should be using within your mix, so on and so forth when it comes to vocals. So I figured I'd make this short tutorial and give you my top 3 tricks that you can implement and put into action immediately for better results within your mixes. And I just want to say this, if you're interested in achieving better results with the gear you have right now, you can download my 5 steps to better heavy mixes guide for absolutely free. There's a link below to it, right below in this video's description. So without any further ado, let's check out the audio sample, dive deep and see how I'm compressing my vocal tracks. Let's get right to it. Okay, so that audio sample was by my good friends in a band called Poeta. I will leave a link to their music below in this video's description. Check it out, great group of guys and excellent, talented musicians that could write some songs, some catchy songs. So now let's get right to it and check out the compression that I have on my vocal tracks. And all of them are utilizing the exact same or very similar chains. So what I wanna do is I'm gonna focus on my verse vocal because I use that as a template for the rest of my vocals, chorus vocals, background vocals, everything. And the first tip is to stack compressors. If you look here, here's my vocal track. For my verse, I have a stock Pro Tools compressor up first in my chain, followed up by an EQ, and then a second compressor. Now the reason why I'm stacking these compressors is because I find, and this is a common mixing technique, it's not unique to me, but when you stack 2 compressors, both working a little bit each within themselves, you end up with a much more transparent result instead of just taking a single compressor and slamming it. Now this production was mixed entirely within a box and recorded directly in through an interface, so I didn't record any compression on the way in with an analog hardware unit or anything like that. It's only the processing that you're hearing within the mix itself. Now I just mentioned this in a previous video, a lot of times what guys will do in bigger studios is record their vocals with compression on the way in. But again, I didn't do that. My vocals were recorded straight into the interface with an SM7B right into my Mode 2. That's it. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna play the sample back and I want you to pay close attention to what's happening within these 2 compressors. This is my first compressor and this is my second compressor that's happening after my EQ. So pre-EQ, post-EQ. Let's take a look. So what's happening here is I'm using the first compressor almost kind of like a peak limiter, sort of. It's just doing some very light compressing before my EQ, and the second compressor is working much more heavily. By having the lighter compression first, it's just making the job of the second compressor way easier. It doesn't have to be this way. You can have both doing around the same amount of compression. You could have more compression first. In my opinion, it really doesn't make that much of a difference. This is just what I dialed in when I mixed the song. And also, I just want to say this, don't get hung up on the exact attack and release times because it really sounds different depending on the compressor you're working with. The overall idea is that you're just using 2 different compressors, both working independently, so you end up with a much more consistent vocal sound that's transparent. So that's tip number 1. Stack 2 different compressors, give it a shot, and see how you like the results. You'll probably find that you'll end up with, again, a much more consistent vocal sound that doesn't sound overly squashed like one compressor would end up doing to a vocal track if you're only using one. Tip number 2, use a brick wall limiter to catch any stray peaks that are going beyond the second compressor. So I'm gonna play that sample back once more and take a look at the gain reduction that's taking place within my classic old school L1 limiter. Let's check it out.
Stay with me, you're running off like you never could be safe. Breathe for me.
Yeah, so if you look at the attenuation in here, you probably saw around 2 to 3 dB of gain reduction. Again, this is just catching the stray peaks that are escaping the second compressor, so to speak. So for me, I prefer to use a brick wall limiter post-compression just to tame stray peaks for an extra consistent vocal sound that again sounds transparent because these processes are all doing very little. And of course, I just want to say this, do not obsess over what tool I'm using. The idea is to just use a brick wall limiter with an infinity-to-1 ratio. Okay, and this brings me to tip number 3. And guess what? It's sort of a cheat because it has nothing to do with compression. And the tip is to use volume automation on your vocals and to not be lazy and try to achieve it all with compression and limiting. So what I'm gonna do right here is I'm gonna play the exact same verse back, and I want you to pay close attention to this little bit of volume automation that I have happening on these few lyrics right up in here. Let's take a listen.
Breathe for me, in and out now. You're trying to break free, but I've tried everything from love to hate and everything between.
So yeah, I dipped the vocal by about a dB only on those few lyrics because he was really belting on those few lyrics. Now yes, the compressors were doing their job, the peak limiter was doing its job, but I still felt like that vocal was poking through too much. And what a lot of people end up doing is they'll try to achieve that extra bit of consistency all with processing when it's just not necessary. Always remember, you have volume automation available to you for absolutely free, regardless of the DAW you're using, and volume automation is a classic mixing technique. Is it sexy? Is it fun? Not really. People generally don't like to talk about it because it's not exciting, but volume automation is a huge part of pro mixers' workflows. Watch any interview with Andy Wallace or Chris Lord-Alge, and I'm sure you'll hear them talk a whole lot about automation. It's one of the secrets of truly breathing life into your production. And unfortunately, it's become a lost art within DAWs because we don't have faders in front of us, but that doesn't mean that you can't do it. I don't use faders, I simply draw in any automation that I feel is necessary to bring out sections of the song or sort of like, push back certain sections of the music that I'm working on. And in this case, those vocals just really popped out to me, but instead of slamming my vocals with compression, I just reduced the volume by a dB or so only on that section. So that's vocal compression tip number 3. Do not hesitate to use volume automation when necessary. Now, I also want to mention this, there are no rules. It really comes down to your own personal preference and style. I can't tell you to always use volume automation in this scenario or that scenario. It really comes down to your ears and what you want to hear. My best piece of advice is to not overthink it. Always remember that this is an art form. There is no right or wrong, and just dial in what feels right to you within the moment. So there you have it. Those are my top 3 vocal compression technique tips. Implement them and let me know of your results by leaving a comment in the comment section below. And also let me know, is vocal compression something you struggle with? Let me know your opinion. I'd love to hear it. If you found this video helpful, like, comment, subscribe, and share. And do not forget to click the little bell icon so you can be notified every time I upload one of the weekly videos on all things metal and rock production. You can both like and follow me on Facebook and Instagram. Links are in the description below. And again, you can download my 5-step guide to better heavy mixes by clicking the link below. Download the guide for absolutely free and get to achieving better results within your home studio with the gear you already have. And until next time, happy mixing.